Hey guys, what's up? We're in the middle of a stream and we decided we wanted to talk about the Paladins. It was not a joint decision, it was forced upon me by a viewer. So let me close down this so we could talk about them. So I was in TOA, I was doing TOA 87 with the, or TOA, no, 86, I believe it was, with the Fire and Dark Liches on one of the stages, and I was thinking about finding a better way to provoke those fire liches because my Mav only has a single target provoke, and they're super annoying. So you have to single target provoke them and then stun them in addition, so that it's held down and doesn't do what it's got to do. So I thought we should do an in-depth analysis of these guys, since you could have a 2-turn provoke. You better check them out. Pulls out again. See, Pablo's gonna kill me if I don't. Like I gotta be careful with this. So what came to mind when I thought about multiple turn provokes and stacking a provoke with a stun is a monster with 2-turn provoke, which led me to think about Jian, the fusible paladin, the light paladin, and her uses, as I don't really see many uses for her other than sometimes I see her in Guild Wars, which is kind of weird, kind of funky. I can't really see her in any arena defense metas. So I wanted to talk about her usage in TOA. So she has an AoE provoke for 2 turns, which is really, really useful because in TOA oftentimes you have monsters that are elementally disadvantaged to monsters you're fighting against, but you're bringing them because they have some sort of skill that is useful. For example, you bring a Thrain because he has the AoE stuns on the 3rd skill and the AoE dots on the 2nd skill. Same thing with Manchur. You bring Manchur because 2nd skill you have the slow and 3rd skill you have the defense, break, and dots. But for example, if you're on a stage that has a bunch of light monsters that are capable of doing a ridiculous amount of damage or ignoring defense, who you know are going to target your team, and perhaps those monsters are squishy because you've given them a lot of speed and a lot of accuracy in order to do what they have to do, a monster like Jian is really, really going to help you out, because that 2-turn provoke is going to take all the aggro off of those monsters that are elementally disadvantaged to the enemies and make them attack Jian instead. So this means that those monsters get to survive and do what they have to do, and at the same time you're controlling their attacks, and they can only use their 1st skill, which means if they have some crazy AoE or some skill you don't want them to do, such as the liches, fire liches getting procs whenever you take a turn and just going crazy on your team doing AoEs and murdering your Bernard or your Mav or whatever other wind unit you may happen to bring, GN can stop that from happening, which is really cool. Other stages, of course, boss stages. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure this does not work at the TOA 100 boss. The provoke might work. I'm pretty sure it doesn't though, especially since because the male boss cleanses anyways. But on the bosses leading up to it, every 10 floors leading up to it, you can provoke most of those monsters, and that, of course, unless they have a passive that prevents it or some form of immunity that comes up or a cleanse on their squad, you can provoke them. And for example, a Sierra, you can provoke a Sierra and prevent Sierra from using the bomb, provoke all the enemies, prevent them from using the bombs. And because she's a light monster, she's element neutral to everything except for dark. So that allows her to take, not significant damage, as opposed to Mav, who, for example, will take more damage if they that doesn't do anything at the boss 100 floor. That's confirmed by Sith Lord. For example, all the other stages where maybe you have a Mav, if you provoke the Fire Lich with a Mav, of course, since that is your only provoke, unless you're using a Basalt, your Mav is probably going to die to those Liches unless your Mav is very, very tanky, because very high level in TOA hard, 80 and up. Unless you have a really tanky Mav, you're going to be taking some significant damage, since those Fire Liches do put out pretty large numbers, since when they proc that additional turn, they do get an attack buff and a crit rate buff, so they're likely to have multiple crits on your Mav. And that's just an example, and that is a single target provoker. But like I said, Jian has a AoE provoke, which is crazy, and for 2 turns that's really, really good, so you really lock down those monsters. 2nd skill, you have a single target cleanse and invincibility, which is really, really good, especially if you use this the turn after you do Cry of Provocation. Use the Prayer of Protection to protect Jian. So basically you provoke all the enemies, you get whatever turns, maybe you research because you're using a Konamaya or the Light Garuda for the revive. However you set up your team. Perhaps Jian gets an additional turn because you have attack speed slow on their team or on the enemies and attack speed buff on your team, so Jian will be able to get an invincibility on herself, which prevents the enemies from doing any damage to her. And so now you have a completely provoked opposite team, and you have an invincible GN, which can take all the damage in the world and not have to worry about anything whatsoever. Also, a stun on the first skill, very similar to Mav, and so this unit in particular I would really relate to Mav more than anything. You can think about it as a Mav minus the cooldown reduction for your team, which is a big reason why a lot of people bring Mav. Big reason why I bring Mav is for that third skill. But other than that, it's very, very similar to Mav. It has a self-heal, and it has some form of provoke, as well as being a tanky monster that provides some sort of stress relief for your team. Of course, GN has the invincibility as well as the AoE provoke rather than the single target provoke, but I think GN, with the crazy high base stats, and I say crazy high, it is a natural 5-star monster, but the 12k HP and 700 defense is very, very respectable, and with some decent runes, you can get a lot more out of GN than you could maybe get out of a Mav if provoke is why you're bringing it. So first skill is attack the enemy and stun them with a 15% chance. Much like the Mav first skill, has a chance to land a stun, which I think is really, really cool. It means that the first skill isn't completely useless. You can see monsters like Beretta without Despair. Beretta would be kind of useless, but Beretta of course has the Despair set usually, or should always have the Despair set. So Beretta can stun on the first skill. GN can stun on the first skill as well, which means that even the first skill is going to be impactful for your team. Also, the heal based on GN's max HP, which is really, really good since, like I said, GN has a really, really good max HP stat. So we're going to hop over to the water and fire ones because those are the ones requested. We'll start with the fire one. Ophelia. Start with a third skill. Creates a shield that's proportionate to 20% of your max HP on all allies for 2 turns and activates a threat state. Threat state means that enemies cannot attack any other unit besides this. It's similar to a provoke, except it's a provoke essentially that's irresistible, or immunity doesn't matter at all. And what that means is that even if the enemy monsters have immunity, will, whatever, no matter what, they have to attack Ophelia. So it's really, really nice in situations like RTA. I've seen her used in RTA just because of that third skill. In some really, really unique teams, not in typical high-level RTA, but in some unique teams, just because the enemies don't really have a choice but to attack her. Also, I've seen some on arena defense, as it's harder to Lucian nuke her with the high base HP stat. So it's pretty unique, as well as the shields for your team. It's really good to get her to move either quickly or have her on a will set so she can get that off without being impeded. But again, it's a similar effect to the light one, where you are essentially making sure that all the enemies must attack you. The only thing is they can choose any skill they want to use. So that part of it you are missing, but it is irresistible, so it's guaranteed that they have to attack Ophelia or select Ophelia as the primary target of their attack, regardless of the unit. So second skill, the same thing. First skill, the same thing. You get immunity after on this first skill, which is kind of nice. So it's a really, really cool third skill with a shield to your team, so it gives your team a little bit more survivability. I think either on a super, super tanky team where you need your team a little bit of time, give your team a little bit of time to set up, or on a team where you have a really, really squishy nuker that really needs this chance to go. It could be good in Guild Siege defense, Guild Wars defense, and even Arena defense, depending on how you rune and the comp that you bring her with. All around, I think she's a really strong unit, and she's got this really nice Guild War leadership skill of 44% defense, which is great, as these monsters you're typically going to build with a lot of HP, because Ophelia, I think, is a great monster to use in order to prevent attacks from Lucian or prevent Lucians from nuking you. So that's pretty cool. So we're going to head into the water one next, Josephine. I see a lot of Josephine used. Josephine might be my favorite personally. So yeah, let's talk about her passive. She creates a shield that's proportionate to 20% of her HP, so the same size shield as the fire one Ophelia has on yourself and your allies when an ally is under inability effects. All your harmful effects are removed, and you'll instantly get another turn afterwards. So it's a passive that happens every 6 turns at max, so it's kind of cool. The problem is, if it's based on if your ally's under inability effects, right? So the shield won't go off if the enemy's just straight up nuking you with ignored defense damage like Lucian. But she's still kind of unique, and she can still help if maybe your team gets stunned or something. It will cleanse that off and give that shield. So it's pretty cool. And you get an additional turn as well, which is kind of neat. Which will allow her to use her second skill, which is different from the other two. She attacks the enemy 2 times to remove beneficial effects with a 75% with each attack, and then provokes. So it's a potential double buff strip into provoke, which can be really, really nice, especially because if you think about it, a lot of monsters like Chloe, for example, has 2 buffs. Wusa gives the enemy team 2 buffs, so against a monster like Wusa you can strip through that shield and that immunity together, rather than just having a small likelihood to strip through one or the other and then hopefully get that provoke. So that's really, really nice. And then of course on the first skill you stun the enemy with a 35% chance, and it will never glance, which is really, really fun. Any monster that doesn't glance on the first skill or has a guaranteed effect not to glance has a really good chance of landing it, or a higher chance of landing this on wind monsters, of course. So I think it's really, really cool. I think the skill is really unique and can be used against wind monsters too. So we'll hop right into Louise, even though we weren't going to talk about Louise, just because we might as well go through all of them, right? So let's talk about this one, Divine Wind. Recovers the HP of all allies by 25%, creates a shield that's proportionate to 25% of your HP for 3 turns. I think this is kind of neat, actually. I think that this monster is kind of like a small upgrade from I can't think of the monster, but it reminds me of something. It reminds me of a really early game monster, and I think I kind of like this because she seems like she has some decent viability in a really early, safe Giants B10 team. It definitely seems like one of those Nat 5s where if you pull it on your account early game, you can make really great use of it in Giants to give your team survivability, and either as a supplement to Bella or a potential replacement if you have an alternate defense breaker. Can really provide your team with a lot of safety, because not only do you get that HP, 25% HP, same as Bella, but you also get a shield proportionate to Louise's HP, and you're going to be, of course, giving them a lot of HP. And even with just energy runes, like 3 energy sets, Louise is going to have a lot of HP on your team. So this is going to be a pretty hefty shield, which will help mitigate damage even greater. Also, the remove all harmful effects on an ally and gives them invincible on the second skill is really nice, because if you have a monster that's close to dying, maybe the AI works. I'm not 100% sure about how the AI works in Giants, but it is a monster, gets cleansed, single target cleansed, and gets invincibility. And of course the first one attacks and stuns the enemy and decreases their attack bar by 30%. So that's kind of cool. The first skill, attack bar reduces, so on the Giant, you can actually attack bar reduce with the first skill, so it's not 100%. It's not like a useless first skill that just does a tiny little bit of damage, which is really, really awesome. So next we're going to head into the dark one and finish it up, the non-fusible one. We have Leona. Really neat monster. I've seen a few of these actually, a lot more than I thought I would in arena defenses. So when the battle begins, balance the defense and attack power so that the stat with the lower value will have the same value as the stat with the higher value. And as Sith Lord has reassured me, this happens before the fight starts, so Oblivion does not matter, which is really cool, because no matter what, this happens. You balance out the attack and defense stats. So I'm assuming for every single monster, regardless, this is based on their total attack or total defenses, not their base defenses before rune adjustments to those stats. So I think it's really good on defense. It'll shut down a lot of those monsters that are really high damage nukers that have a lot of attack and very low defense based stats, because it'll reduce the damage they do. It's essentially another form of damage reduction, but guaranteed damage reduction, which is really, really fun. And the second skill is the strip and provoke with the 75% chance, and the first skill is attack and stun enemy with an 85% chance, significantly higher than any other stun chance, which is really cool. That is the only thing she brings. She does not bring anything else in terms of attack bar reduction or invincibility or immunity for herself, or even heal, but it is a really high chance to stun. So she's really, really interesting. I think she's amazing on defense, both Guild War and in arena as well, depending of course on who you put her with, but put her with a strong healer and a nuker for backup, or a bruiser for backup like Perna for example, would benefit great from the passive, because this is all, yeah, I think this is great. I think this monster all around is really, really great, and it really pushes toward the bruiser meta I wish I saw more of in Arena. Of course, right now we have the speed meta, where the thing that matters most in the game is having a really, really fast attack bar booster, some form of attack buffer, and then Lucians, of course. Lucians or some other nuker to take down your team. And I feel like monsters like this that have these passives are really, really fun and can do a lot in terms of pushing the meta toward a meta that's more fun, in my opinion, because I feel like it's kind of getting stale to see Bastet double Lucian, Bastet triple Lucian, whatever, or Megan triple Lucian, some stupid comps like that just plow through every single defense without any care in the world. So I'd love to see more mechanics like this. Of course, 33% crit rate lead in Guild Wars. She could be nice as a crit rate leader, depending on the comps you bring her with. Like I said, a monster like Perna, it feels like would benefit a lot from this, since Perna you do want to be really tanky, but at the same time give a lot of damage too. So monsters with really, really high base stats, I feel can benefit a lot from these. Of course, these is a lot of these usages for these units are biased. They're where I would use them and the ways that I like to see these units. If you have any input, of course, leave them in the comment section below. Always correct me if I said anything that was wrong in the video. I'm always happy to hear your input and correct my content accordingly. Thank you guys all for watching this short monster overview, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Hey guys, it's West again. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more.